I want to welcome you again to the Financial Markets A to Z for Beginners. In this section, what I want to cover is the big picture. So when we say big picture, we look taking a global view of financial markets, which is also, I call it the macro view. And let's look at what kind of money exists, how much money exists, where are they invested. And it's always good to have this kind of a macro picture so that you understand the enormity of what we are talking about in global financial markets. So let's get right to it. We want to define what institutional investors are. So, first of all, people like you, me, or someone else, these are what we call retail investors. And then the big money, of course, rests with what we call institutional investors. Now, who are these institutional investors? First of all, they can be countries and states, federal pension, social security, welfare funds. Obviously, these are all running into perhaps hundreds of billions of dollars, maybe even a trillion or two. In fact, the Japanese government has about $2 trillion in its federal pension fund. Then we have state pension funds. California, if you've heard of CalPERS, the California pension fund is about 400 billion, just one state. And so you have all these different state pension funds, retirement funds, and welfare funds. Then countries have reserves. So, for example, China has about $3 trillion worth of reserves. They also have sovereign funds. Now, sovereign funds are like venture funds, but they're sponsored by the country. So, you'll have sovereign funds from Singapore, China, UAE, and all these kinds of countries. These are all investment funds that they want to get the best return from anywhere in the world. Then the next big category are the large primary financial institutions. So here you have your global banks, Goldman Sachs, Citibank, HSBC, things like that. Insurance companies, of course, and they have a lot of cash in their hands, and obviously they want to look for safe returns. So now you've got to understand all these people are looking for safe returns, and so it's not speculative money. Then you have brokerages companies across the world. You have financial services companies across the world. These are the next big bucket of institutional investors. And below them, then you have your financial asset managers. So you'll have companies like Fidelity, E-Trade. They all handle 401k. They handle mutual funds. There are also hedge funds and mutual funds which hold some money. Private equity sits on a lot of cash as well. Venture capital sits on a lot of cash until they invest their money. So that's also a huge pool of investment money that's available to go across the world and find a good return. Then, of course, you have global corporations. So you might have heard that just American corporations have $2 trillion worth of cash sitting outside the United States for various tax purposes. That doesn't, concern us right now. But basically, global corporations have a lot of cash, and once again, they want to deploy this cash in a safe manner. And then you have private institutions like your estates, trusts, university endowment funds, which is a big category in the United States. Just the top 10 schools have about 200 billion in endowment funds. And then you have various foundations which have a lot of money, the Clinton Foundation, the Gates Foundation. And so all of this money is looking for some return because you can't just keep it in the bank where you get zero or close to zero. So they want to invest this money, but they want to invest it safely because they don't want to erode their principal. And then finally, of course, you have what we call retail investors. So retail investors are private investors, traders, speculators, and you, me, and millions of others. And actually, this is a pretty big group now. Globally, there are supposed to be about 200 million to about 400 million retail investors. So the key thing is all of this money is moving globally. And so that's what we want to get a little feel for. Now, next, let's just get a feel for what are the numbers here. This is what it looks like in 2015. Just pension funds worldwide have about $40 trillion. Mutual funds have another 35 trillion. Insurance funds, 30 trillion. Then you have all the other institutional investors, sovereign funds, hedge funds, private equity, retirement, endowments, and individual investors are also included in that, about 80 trillion. So totally, somewhere around between 220 to 250 trillion dollars is available for investment and is looking for a return, but it's also looking for safety because this is the kinds of funds that don't want to hit the ball out of the park. All they want is safety of principal and they want a little return for their money. So this is the size we are talking about. All this money is moving globally and they're being invested in either financial assets or physical assets. For the purposes of this course, we're going to look at financial assets. Financial assets includes anything that's traded in terms of financial securities, stocks, bonds, ETFs, and there are various other instruments as well. So we're going to look at all of this in the coming sections. But in this lecture, I wanted to just give a quick overview of what kind of size we're talking about. We're talking about a lot of money, and money just moves globally and has no barriers for the most part, and we'll cover that in the next lecture as well.